How do you speak English so well, but you have an accent? Do you cook curry? Did your parents arrange your marriage? These are some of the questions I get asked when people find out I'm from India. So today I thought I would answer some of those questions and share my responses and my thoughts on them. So let's start with the accent. So when people hear me speak English in the US, and again, I don't want to generalize, but I've had people ask me, how come you speak English so well, but you have an accent? So let me talk about the English part first. India was a British colony and they introduced English in the 1700s. And English is the second official language of India. So even after the British left in 1947, people continue to use English in the bigger cities. So it is a language that many of us grew up with. It is spoken in the big cities. It is a language that is used in a lot of the bigger corporations, in companies, in higher education. Of course, if you go to the more rural areas of India, English may not be spoken. They might know a few words. And now with television and so many English shows out there, I'm sure people's grasp of English is much better. In terms of the accent, yes, I do have an Indian English accent. But if you come to India, you come to India from the US and you speak English in India, obviously, they'll say you have an American accent. So I think the only maybe true accent, and I say this in air quotes, is the British accent because that's where English is from. But even if any folks from the UK visit India, you'd say they have a British accent. Now, talking about English and accents, even in India, even though we speak English in different cities or maybe towns, the accents differ. And I know, at least in the US, when people sometimes imitate Indian accents, they do the Apu accent from the Simpsons show. And for many of us, that's pretty offensive. It's an exaggerated Indian accent, and not all Indians sound like that. As I said, even in India, we have different accents. I can tell which part of India someone is from based on their accent when they speak English. So just wanted to share that with you. And then I'll go on to my next question because it's kind of related to language. So I get people ask me if I speak Hindi, if I speak Hindu or Indian. Indian is not a language. It's what you call people from India. And Hindu is a religion. So neither of those are languages. Hindi is the national language of India. I did grow up learning Hindi, but because I was surrounded by people who spoke English and I'm not good at languages, unfortunately, my Hindi is not that good. There are over 22 officially recognized languages in India and over 1,600 dialects. So not everyone speaks Hindi. In different states, they'll have different languages. Like my family is from Mangalore and Bangalore, which is in the state of Karnataka. So the main language there is Kannada. So there are different languages across India. And then let's talk about the next question that I get asked. They ask me, are you Hindu? Now, 79% of people in India are Hindus. It is the religion in India, but there are other religions as well. There's Buddhism, there are people who are Jews, Jains, Zoroastrians, Christians, Muslims. So I'm Christian, I'm actually Catholic. Number of Christians in India, 2.3%. Yes, I am a minority, but then if you think of 2.3% in a population of over 1 billion, those are a lot of Christians. The next question I get asked is, are you vegetarian? I think it's about 39%, around 39% are vegetarian in India. Some of them are vegetarian for religious reasons. So my mom cooked all kinds of meat growing up. We had tongue, we had chicken liver, pork, fish, and anything and everything that folks in the US who are meat eaters would eat. So yes, I'm not vegetarian, and not everyone from India is vegetarian. And then another question I get asked is, did your parents arrange your marriage? Yes, a majority of folks in India have had arranged marriages, especially my parents' generation. But my parents was an arranged marriage. My brother had an arranged marriage. And there's different kinds of arranged marriages. Maybe in the older generations, you got to meet the person you were going to marry once. I've heard of stories where people met their spouse on the wedding day at the wedding. But I think there's a lot of flexibility in arranged marriages. My parents were introduced to each other, but they dated for a while before they married. So it wasn't like my mom was forced to marry my dad or vice versa. So it is pretty flexible. Sometimes it's really good because you know the families, and sometimes it's hard to find someone who's like-minded, thinks like you, might have similar religious beliefs, values, morals. So arranged marriages can be a good thing, but maybe you might not always meet the person that you want to marry through an arranged marriage. My dad did try to introduce me to guys, but I just didn't take to any of them. Maybe for me, the concept of arranged marriage and having all the family putting this pressure on you. Did you like the guy? Do you want to go out with him again? Was too much for me. So I actually didn't marry an Indian. I married an American, and I will maybe do another video to talk all about, marrying outside of the community, etc. And then the next question I get asked is, do you cook curry? So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about curry. So curry powder does not even exist in India. The first time I saw curry powder was when I came to the US. In one of the stores, maybe Safeway or somewhere, I saw this tin of curry powder and I was like, what is this? Because in India, we have individual spices, and when you cook, you usually use those different spices to make a dish. So we don't have this generic curry powder. Not everything in India is curry. Not everything in India is our naans and chicken tikka masala. Now, India has so many different dishes that naans and chicken tikka masala are a dish in the north. But even in the north, the south, the east, the west, there's such a variety of dishes, of flavors. It's very diverse and varied. I have a lot of Indian dry dishes. Not everything is made with a curry. And talking about curries and naans, we do not call it naan bread. These are a couple of things that I think a lot of Indians find a bit uh, irritating or maybe funny. You don't say naan bread because naan is basically a kind of bread. It's like saying bread or pizza bread. The same thing with tea. When you're calling something chai tea here in the US, you're basically saying tea because the meaning of chai in India is tea. So I would hope that anyone watching this who works for a coffee shop or who even makes their tea at home, do not call it chai tea. If you're going to add spices to your tea, call it masala tea. And the same thing with curry. They will call it curry sauce. uh, Curry is a sauce. It is a gravy, so just call it curry. So those are a few of my pet peeves. And I wanted to share something really funny, talking about the questions I've been asked when I've moved to the US. One of the really ridiculous questions when I was studying in New York, maybe this guy wasn't very familiar with India. He hadn't traveled much, maybe he hadn't read much. It was actually this film school in New York. So, I mean, it couldn't have been that unaware of what was going on in the world. But he asked me, do you guys have cars in India? And I was, kind of really surprised at his question. I said, no, we don't have cars. I go to work on my pet elephant. The other question I get asked is, did you grow up watching Bollywood films, or what's your favorite Bollywood film? First of all, I want to share with people that Bollywood is not the only film industry in India. There's almost every state in India has their own film industry. In fact, I believe the two biggest film industries in India are films made in languages like Telugu and Tamil. They're bigger than Bollywood, which is Hindi speaking and which is from Mumbai. So again, people in different parts of India might grow up watching whatever the regional films were for that state. Yes, Bollywood's really popular and they've been able to, make themselves known in the US, but there are many different languages and types of films and film industries in India. I actually grew up watching American and British films. I guess because my family for a couple of generations spoke English, they were Catholic, so they went to schools and to church and colleges run by the Irish, maybe with some British influence. So their whole the kind of culture that I grew up in was a mix of Indian and Western culture, and in some ways the Western culture was stronger. So yes, I watched English speaking films. I grew up on Sound of Music and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and My Fair Lady. I'm dating myself a bit. I do enjoy watching a Bollywood film once in a way. It's fun. It helps you relax. I love the music and the dancing. So that is it for today. These are the questions I get asked. If you are watching this video and have been asked questions, either because you're from India, other countries, and living in a country other than your passport or country of origin, do share in the comments what are the kinds of questions you've been asked. And if you like this video, do give it a like and do subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.